Chairman, the meeting is live on YouTube now. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Jeanette. Oh, well. I don't know. This is very thin on the ground, isn't it? Okay, we'll kick off then. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Boston Borough Council's Corporate and Community Committee. My name is Councillor Stephen Woodliff, and I am the chairman of this committee. My vice chairman is Councillor Anton Denny, sitting to my right. Firstly, can I ask you all, when you are speaking, that you please do so using the microphones carefully, without getting too close to them. I'm probably too close now, I expect. In order that everyone may hear you clearly. I must advise you that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube to the entire nation. I will now ask committee members to introduce themselves. So I'm Councillor Steve Woodliff. Sir, you want to go for it?
I'm Councillor Anton Denny, the Deputy Chairman of this committee.
I'm Councillor Frank Pickett, Mayor of Boston, a member of the Community Committee.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Paul Goodall and I'm substituting for Councillor Alan Bell on this committee.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Alison Austin. I'm a member of this committee.
Good evening, Councillor Judy Welburn. I'm substituting for Martin Howard on this committee.
We have also, pardon me. We also have with us, the portfolio holder with us, Councillor Nigel Welton, to answer any questions members may have on the report. So welcome to you. I don't know whether actually we do have Councillor Nigel Welton, do we? You are?
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Nigel. Sorry.
Good evening, Chairman and committee.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you very much. Two other cabinet members are here to observe. That's Councillor Richard Austin and Councillor Jonathan Noble. I'm not sure if Richard is here to observe, is he?
Richard didn't know he was here to.
I thought we received apologies. Did we?
Sorry?
Did Richard send us some apologies? He hasn't got parish council meeting this evening.
Yes, but he wouldn't be here anyway. He's not.
No, but he's a cabinet member. He's a cabinet member, isn't he?
Well, not anything. Not, if you don't mind me saying so, I wouldn't have thought his cabinet portfolio covers anything to do with this any more than any other member of the cabinet.
You're probably quite right, Councillor Austin, but I'm only reading the script here, and it must be true because it's in front of me. You know what it's like. Whatever is printed down must be true, mustn't it?
Chairman, I received a message from Councillor Austin when the agenda was first published to say that he would be attending to observe.
Yes, I did. Yes, Jeanette, I also received it, but I thought I ought to read it out, in case Richard decided to turn up instead. But however, anyway. So, welcome to Jonathan Noble. Welcome, Jonathan. Thank you. Now, please could the officers present themselves? Yes, present themselves.
Evening, Mr. Chairman. Andy Fisher, Deputy Interim Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. Lorraine Bush, Democratic Services Delivery Manager.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. And those attending virtually.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, councillors. James Gilbert, Interim Deputy Chief Executive People.
And Jeanette Collier, Democratic Services Officer and Clerk for the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, now we move into part one of the agenda, the preliminaries. Firstly, to receive apologies for absence and notices of substitutions, if any. Jeanette? Can't hear you, Jeanette. Shall I read them out? I will answer them. Jeanette will answer. There are apologies for absence from Councillors Alan Bell, David Brown, Vivian Edge, Martin Howard, Judy Skinner, and Yvonne Stevens. And I received notice that Councillor Judy Wellborn is attending to substitute for Councillor Howard, and Councillor Paul Goodale is attending as to substitute for Councillor Bell. Did you hear that, Jeanette?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I lost my controls momentarily.
Oh, it's live on YouTube, I'm afraid, or whatever, isn't it? Now, to receive any declarations of interest in respect to any item on this agenda, does any member have any interest to declare? Yes.
Well, only that I'm chairman of BTAC and I would have attended in that role, but as I'm substitute for Councillor Bell, I'm actually here as a committee member, but I suppose I ought to make that declaration.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Goodale. I ought to then declare an interest, shouldn't I? Because I'm vice chairman of BTAC, and so I attended a meeting to discuss all this. So I'll declare an interest that I'm vice chairman of BTAC, and Councillor Paul Goodale is chairman of BTAC itself. And yes, Councillor Austin, and you are?
Well, I am a member of BTAC.
Yes.
Ought I to be declaring that?
I suppose so.
It's about half of us are, aren't we? Well,
and then I suppose everybody else, yes.
Then we have to declare as a member of BTAC also. So
yes. Sorry, I'm sorry, Frank. You're
No,
not
Chair, no, I've no interest.
yeah. Okay. Yes. Right. To receive any written questions from members of the public.
There are none, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. That concludes the preliminary items, and we will now move to part 2 of the agenda. The main item of business tonight is a report on the Community Governance Review, which starts on page 1 of the agenda, and Lorraine Bush, the Democratic Services Delivery Manager, will present it. Over to you, Lorraine.
is it possible that that is removed so that we can actually see the face if it's someone who's talking on screen? I think we only have to press whatever that blue thing says.
Well done. Brilliant. Okay, fine.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, when you're ready, Lorraine. Okay.
Thank you.
No hurry.
The report before you this evening has been produced at the request from BTAC for the Council to trigger a community governance review of the town wards of the Borough Council. A copy of the BTAC report and minutes from the meeting are attached to Appendix 1 for your information. The potential for local government reorganisation for Lincolnshire has been a factor in the request from BTAC as a means of protecting the town's identity and history for future generations should devolution or reorganisation from Lincolnshire come to fruition. Cabinet considered the request from BTAC at its meeting on the 12th of May this year. Following debate, it was agreed to refer the matter to the Corporate and Community Committee to enable scrutiny of the proposal prior to formal consideration and final decision by full council. Section 2 of the report sets out the process for a community governance review. Under 2.2, it sets out what the aims of a community governance review should achieve, including better local democracy, resulting in more effective and convenient delivery of local services, improved community engagement, and reflects the identities and interests of the community in that area. The community governance review involves various stages as set out in section 2.4 of the report. If agreed by council, a working group of members and appropriate officers and external advice would be set up. The group would then consider setting a terms of reference for the review and publishing those terms of reference. The point of publishing the terms of reference is when the community governance review date is actually triggered, and there is then 12 months from that date to complete the review. As part of the review process, there would be consultation with electors for the area and any other person or body who has interest in the review. Once we've the first stage of the consultation has been completed, the representations would be considered and draft proposals published. Consultations would then be undertaken on the draft proposals for a period of 3 months. Again, the representations will be considered and final recommendations published prior to a final decision by full council. As I've said, a review must be concluded within 12 months of the publication of the terms of reference. When undertaking a review, a principal council must have regard to the guidance issued by the Secretary of State and the Electoral Commission, and that is attached to Appendix 2 of the report. Section 3 of the report sets out the considerations should a community governance review be triggered for the Boston town area, and sets out a number of matters that should be taken into account, including the potential overheads for a town council, in that they may be potentially higher than those that are incurred by BTAC at the moment, as you would, a town council would need to have its own clerk and specialist financial officers, administration officers, etc. An estimated cost of a review is in the region of £10,000. Boston Borough Council has never undertaken a community governance review before, and those costs are based on similar reviews undertaken by other councils. Other considerations are: where would the town council be based? The drawing up of a community governance order, which will require expert legal support, and transitional arrangements are also set out as to how any transition from a area committee to a town council would be carried out. Section 4 sets out options for creating town councils following local government reorganisation. Recent examples of this are in Northamptonshire, where all the district councils were abolished and 2 unitary authorities created to replace the county council and the district councils. The previous borough councils for Corby, Kettering, Northampton and Wellingborough were replaced by town councils as part of that review process. Section 5 sets out the options available for consideration for the committee this evening: to recommend that a review be triggered for the town wards, recommend that a review is not undertaken at this time, or recommend that a review be reconsidered when the direction of local government reorganisation for Lincolnshire is known. Obviously, the committee may have put forward other options as well, but those are the ones that are set out in the report. The next steps in the process, if full council were to agree to trigger the review, are set out in section 6. It would be expected to commence possibly in October, November this year for completion in a year. As I've said before, first stage in the process, we're convening a cross-party working group and drawing up terms of reference for the actual group to work to for the review. The group may also consider requesting assistance from external organisations with experience and expertise of conducting these reviews, for example, the National Association of Local Councils, other local authorities and the Lincolnshire Association of Local Authorities. As I've said previously, the purpose of a community governance review is to secure an arrangement which will bring about improved community engagement, better local democracy and result in more effective and convenient delivery of local services. And members are asked to consider if this would be achieved by conducting a community governance review of the Boston town wards, or whether the current governance arrangements, being with the unparished area governed by the Boston Town Area Committee and raising a precept, are effective and the preferred method at this time. Mr. Gilbert, James Gilbert is on the meeting. I don't know if he would like to add anything to that, Chairman.
James, do you want to say anything?
No, not at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Lorraine summarised the report really well, so I think that gives the necessary context for the discussion.
Well, thank you very much. Now, I'll open the matter to debate and questions, but one thing before we start, BTAC did agree with Nigel Welton's proposals, I think, which was to extend it across the borough. Nigel, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Mr. Chairman. That might be a bit difficult because it was a discussion not at BTAC. It was a briefing discussion where that was raised, but the decision was actually made at BTAC that it was the town ward. So we can't really change that without BTAC changing its initial decision, if that makes sense.
Yes, but we are, as a scrutiny committee, we are able to make recommendations of our own, are we not? So we could make a recommendation which is separate from the options available here, and I don't think there's a problem with that. This was recommended by BTAC. No, it wasn't, was it? The full council called for a scrutiny committee, didn't it? That's right. Cabinet, yes. So Cabinet called for this matter to go to scrutiny.
Yeah. I think, to be clear, it was Cabinet moved the BTAC's request to scrutiny.
Right.
I'm not saying which way it should go. I think I was just pointing it out that I couldn't, because I raised that the other night. It's not something that I could change at a full member briefing. However, what you do in your committee, Mr. Chairman, is within your constitutional requirements.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor Pilton. Right, well, okay, we'll open a debate and we'll take it from where we can. But I did think that your suggestions were really apt, and I thought that it was a really good way forward. But however,
if I may, Mr. Chairman, if I may, before you do open, if you do take on board that and decide it's to be a bigger remit, then there are much greater cost implications than just the town wards. So there are different cost implications and maybe different resource implications and time implications. It might be that that level of consultation at that in a much broader area might require us to bring in more, dare I say, expensive outside help in order to do that. So there are other things that might need to be taken into account.
Yes, I accept that. I couldn't be done for 10 grand. I quite understand that. Anyway, I'll open this matter now for debate. I've taken a little time for myself. Yes, Councillor Austin.
First of all, Chairman and Lorraine, I do now realise why my husband why Councillor Austin wanted to attend the meeting. So may I give those reasons?
Yes, go ahead.
It was that consideration must be given to the heritage assets which belong to the borough as a whole. And of course, that is not just the town centre wards, and anyone who has been mayor, like our current mayor, and is not is not representing a town ward, then it's the regalia, it's everything, but also, of course, this building. So it is not just a case of, oh, we'll have a town council. And then we have to also ask, because reading about Northamptonshire and other boroughs, the borough status presumably would be lost. We were granted borough status back in whenever, 1974 or whenever the last local government was. Yeah, but well, yes, are you with me? But unfortunately, then, rather than just becoming a district, we are a borough council, you see, covering the entire district. So those are considerations that have to be made, taken into account at some stage. And especially important, I suppose, I declare, well, I have been a mayor, like nearly all of the people in this room, actually, who have been on the council any length of time. And it's, all its assets are very, very precious. Right, now then, the other thing is, I did warn you that I would mention this. You have to bear in mind that there are approximately 450 electors, and you can judge the number of residents, but I would say a very conservative estimate, perhaps 600. But they pay precept to BTAC, the special expense levy, but they have no representation at BTAC, and that is unacceptable. Somewhere in somebody's constitution, there is that well-known phrase, no taxation without representation. Now, of course, one option would be for those people to decide, well, we'll join Witherton Parish, but Witherton Parish, they're not part of Witherton Parish. The other alternative, which I did suggest to an officer, but it would be much, much simpler, that the borough councillors who represent those members should be permitted, if BTAC still exists, to sit on BTAC. That would be by far the cheapest option. I'll rest my case now and see what everyone else, or listen to what everyone else says. But I do want this, you know, you may say, why am I banging on about these people? But they're paying this precept and they don't get any say as a result.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Well, of course, a borough-wide review of governance would help to resolve that, wouldn't it? That's one of the reasons I think why I'm strongly in favour of a borough-wide review, because there are lots of anomalies, I suspect, across the borough which need to be resolved, and therefore, even though it would be expensive to have a borough-wide review, I think we should go down there. I don't think you can ever waste money on the democratic process. So that's my yes, Karen.
May I add that unofficially, they used to be in my area before we had the boundary review. The boundary people, they've put us in that situation because I had too many electors per councillor. And the only place they could go was to Wibberton. And I either took them from that end or that end of my ward. It was that easy. I mean, there was no other choice. But of course, as I said, the easiest option would be that we just allow extra councillor or councillors to attend BTAC.
But personally, I have no objection to that. But I think there are other anomalies across this borough. And certainly when the Boundary Commission came in and looked at my ward, and I said, I would suggest, following your guidelines, that we take the south 40-foot, the north 40-foot, and Gilbert Drive. It's an enclosed area. Let's make that my ward. And of course, we didn't do that. They took a chunk out of it. So half of South Parade's in my ward, and the other half isn't. It's ludicrous. But you know, whether you do it on a number basis.
Chairman,
Anyway,
Chairman, could I just clarify that a community governance review can't change borough council ward boundaries? It only affects parishes.
I know, I understand that.
And if we were going to do a borough-wide review, we would have to consult with the parishes for their interest and ascertain any issues before we actually triggered the review. Just out of be appropriate and courtesy to see what their interest in doing that would be. And as has already been mentioned, we would need to obtain external support. You'd have to have an officer on a year's contract to carry out such a wide-ranging review, because we haven't got the resources currently in-house to be able to do that.
I understand all that. I don't have a problem with that. I think that ensuring that the public know where they stand with the democratic process is worth every penny that we spend on it, because we spend a lot of money on things. I think it's important that people know how they're governed, because too many people don't seem to know how they're governed. And I think there's a key aspect of democracy that everybody should be aware of who they are, who their representatives are, and why their representatives are as they are. So if it costs £100,000 to do it, you know, that to me is money well spent. But, anyway, yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make
Go on, yes, keep going.
One
Alison.
further point, and then I might be able to shut up for the entire evening.
You don't have to do that.
Lucky, that these few residents are, well, it's all of the Isaac Newton estate and a lot of Wibberton Low Road and a little bit on London Road, but and Woodside. But to the best of my knowledge, they are the only people who are represented by one of the well, let me put it this way, who are not represented by BTAC people. We used to have an anomaly, I believe, with Fishtoft and Pillis Lane, but that was resolved. However, we've got this one, which didn't used to exist, and they are, and not surprised. It's not surprising that they are confused, because the estate agents say, "Oh, you live in Wibberton," but I'm sorry, you do not live in the parish of Wibberton. Ecclesiastically, it used to matter. You couldn't get married, or you couldn't, whatever it was. Yes, but now things are different. But it's the point. It is the principle that they live within the town boundary, and yet they are represented by Wibberton ward councillors.
No. Thank you very much. Right. Who else wants to speak? Any other member? Councillor Goodale, I'm sure you want to speak, don't you?
I do.
Or perhaps, Anton, do you want to? Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. Councillor Pickett, please go ahead.
Well, I quite agree with what Councillor Austin said about the outside villages like Oldleek and Rankle. I mean, it's two large villages, and we don't have a say in BTAC at all, even though, like you said, we pay the same council tax as anybody else. And but I quite agree with Councillor Woodliff that we should have a review and bring it out into all the parish councils to see what they want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pickett. I agree. I think people need to know who represents them. I don't think we spend enough money on educating people and informing people what the democratic process is. So I think we need to do more of that.
Yeah, I quite agree.
Councillor Goodale, yes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, I agree with Alison. Obviously, those residents are important. They were represented by Alison on BTAC, and although they pay the levy now, they no longer have a representative. And I personally don't have. The whole membership of BTAC was a town ward, but as speaking as the chairman, I can only say that from my point of view, that if people who pay the BTAC levy are represented by a different council that's not a member of the town ward, then I have no objection to them attending BTAC. I don't see that being a problem, although it might have to go through the council's constitution, maybe, I don't know. But I mean, I think it's worth really sort of going back to consider why BTAC was actually established in the first place. There are a few members here who would remember that. I know Lorraine was here Ben. But initially, all the parishes used to precept on the borough. They used to tell us how much they wanted, and we used to pay them it. And when I was chairman of policy and finance, I thought, well, this is a bit off. We have a load of all these parishes coming along every year with their demands, and we're having to pay them. So I changed that so that the parishes had to charge their own residents for the services which they wished to provide, instead of the town or the borough council paying for it. And as a consequence, BTAC had to be formed to, if you like, charge the people of the town wards a similar levy for what was being provided by the parish councils at the time, i.e. playing fields and the like. And that was all that was really part of BTAC, just really the playing fields and the play equipment and the like. And that was really all BTAC used to look after. And it was totally, well, basically separate from the council as it was as a committee. It reported directly to full council, but only to full council for information only. BTAC was actually allowed to sort of make its own decisions as to what it spent its money on. But at the time, it was only really playing fields anyway. It wasn't really anything else. But since, well, over the last few years, it's changed. And BTAC now has assumed many other services, which technically does, if you like, bode well with more like a town council than a parish council. I don't think there are many parish councils in the borough that actually look after toilets and all that sort of. The borough that BTAC does, but that's by the by. So that is one essence. I mean, the other one is obviously now BTAC has only 14 members. It actually is outnumbered on the council by the parish councillors. So effectively, what BTAC's levy is and what BTAC spends its money on can be dictated by the parish councillors. So effectively, it can be said by the council, by a majority of members who don't sit on BTAC. They can actually tell BTAC what to spend its money on. And then we do have taxation without representation, if you like, because we have an inbuilt majority of people that don't sit on BTAC, don't live in the town wards, who can actually say to the town wards, we know you've raised this money, but this is how you're going to spend it, which to me is unacceptable. I know there's a cost of £10,000 for the review, and some members may feel that that is excessive and unnecessary at this time, And I know there is a feeling of if if it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. But I feel it is, personally, I feel it is, if not fully broke, is breaking. I think one of the problems also that we have with this is the effect it will have on the parishes. And as this came out the other evening at the member briefing, the discussion that followed, and I wholeheartedly support the suggestion put forward by Councillor Weldon that really we should look for a borough review, because it did seem that this would affect the parish councils. I mean, I think one of the reasons behind this being put forward was the fear of unitary authority status and the loss of the borough status, as Alison has outlined, and that was shall we say, one of the driving factors behind this, because we wanted to try and retain that if possible. How that would be, I don't know. But equally, if we do go to unitary authority status, it will affect all the parishes as well, because they will be left to deliver their own services. Not the borough council will not be here, so we won't be delivering it for them. They won't be able to use the services of the borough council, so they will have to provide their own services as well. So there would be increased costs for them also. One of the things the report doesn't outline is the significant costs that BTAC already pay in terms of recharging. And it can only really guesstimate what services the new town council would provide, whether they be the same as BTAC or not. But there are options, obviously, that a new town council could, if they wish to, use. I mean, they could use PSPS for delivering its office function. They could. I'm not saying they would, but they could. They could be a similar arrangement with the borough council as it exists now, to use the services that it still uses and pay the same recharges as it already does. Although there may be some opposition to that from some members, I suppose, but that could be a possibility. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't actually know what services would be passed over to a new town council. We don't know what the borough council would relinquish, what it would want to pass on. One assumes everything that costs money and the things that make money they would keep, but that's just an assumption. But there you are. I mean, BTAC has actually extended its role to providing services, like, as I said, the toilets. It now provides most of the funding for the major events. It provides the money for the Christmas market and all sorts of things, which it never used to, which the borough council used to fund, which doesn't anymore. And I can see where the extra costs would come in council tax, because obviously if the Boston Town Council didn't pay for those services, then obviously other people would have to and fill that gap. So I can see where there would be extra funding, but at the moment, there is nothing concrete to decide that on. But so I am in favour of looking at forming a town council of the local government review. The chief executive actually did point out to me that we can't actually say that we're actually looking at forming a town council. It is to see how effective the governance of the town is, and if it's proven to be or doesn't seem to be or need changing, then that's what it would. That's where it would come from. But equally, we could say the same now for the parishes, as Councillor Pickett has said at the briefing. Some of the parishes are quite large and they have some large settlements, but they technically are struggling for members, and there may be a need to amalgamate parishes if indeed we do move to unitary authorities. I mean, I think, personally speaking, I think it's a matter of when, not if. I mean, the present government have made it clear that's their preferred option, that all of England will be governed by unitary authorities, and whether it be in this year, next year, or the year after, or even the following parliament, I think it's quite clear if the present government are re-elected, then England will all be unitary authorities. So I think we need to be prepared for that. I think, and I don't I mean, it's a matter for members really whether they believe we can leave it until that day. But given some of the views that parish members or members who represent parishes have made at the briefing, it would seem to me that we possibly do need to look to how the borough is organised, how the parishes are organised, and look with a view to what it would look like after reorganisation. Because, as I said, I think a lot of parishes will have to deliver the services, more services themselves, as well as the towns, obviously. And so I think there is a need there to really look at the whole borough as to what basically the residents and our residents would need to be to actually have a proper representation, a proper should we say services being provided under any new system. So I do. I mean, members may say, "Well, we'll just wait, and it won't cost us anything," which I suppose is true. But all the other costs will remain the same. The increase in running a parish council will remain the same. The costs for a borough council will remain the same. The only difference we're talking about is the cost of the review. And although I accept that that it will cost more to do a whole borough review, and we do need to consult with the parishes to see if they believe it's necessary. I do think it's something we need. I'm happy as chairman of as a member of this committee and as chairman of BTAC to go back to BTAC and put that to BTAC that we wait while the parishes are consulted to see if they would like a whole borough review, and then come back with this after if they say no. But I do believe that BTAC itself has run its course. I believe its services it takes on are more akin to a town council. It was never designed to be a committee of this council. It was never designed for that at all, and now is. So effectively, that means the council has a say over how it spends its money. So effectively, in my view, again, we have taxation without proper representation, as to steal Councillor Austin's phrase, because effectively we can, or BTAC's present members can be overruled at any time by the majority of all members that sit on the council. So that reason alone suggests to me that there is a reason for the recommendation of the governance review. But I'm quite happy for it to be taken as a whole borough review, and I think it makes a lot of sense given the fact that well, the belief, shall I say, that we will be moving to unitary authorities. I'll leave it there, Chairman, and I'm coming later if members have any other comments to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodale. And yes, of course, you can come back at some other time. There's no problem about that. I think that Councillor Downey may have some questions. Or
well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'm very disappointed that we're missing 4 members, 4 councillors in this meeting. We will need them to be here, I think.
Yes,
it will make the discussions much more richer. And probably we need some members of BTAC also to be here so we can all talk and discuss the matter. The way I see it, I think we need a deep searches and studies to this matter so we know where we're going and we should understand it better and what impact will have on Boston or on the borough in general in the future. I completely agree with Councillor Goodale about consulting with other parishes and the borough in whole. So we need that. We need probably to invite members of the public also to come and attend these meetings to see where we're going. We need to inform the public. One of my probably not worries, but it's just the financial impact. Then if we become a town council, how much will it cost us? I would like to know how much money will it cost us? Do we need our own staff? How are we going to run it? How are we going to do things? So all these questions, as Councillor Goodale stated, what are we going to retain from the borough of Boston? Will we have the parkings, the historic places? What incomes we're going to get? Do we have to have just the precept? It's all for me at the moment a bit confusing because I will need to know properly what we will get and how we're going to work and how we're going to have the town council running, and what it, also if we're going to cause any damages to the borough council by having that, if we're going to retain the mayor as it is for the whole borough, or it's going to be just for the town. So all of these things I think need to be answered, and I think we need to know what consequences we are going through, and I think that's my little worries. Thank you.
Well, they're very significant worries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Danny. Now, Councillor Wellborn. Judy Wellborn.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as a minority of a parish councillor here tonight, I honestly think we need a full review across the borough. Most of the parish councils nowadays are so apathetic, they don't want to do anything. And I agree, if you put it out to the parishes, I don't know how much response you'd get from any of the parishes, because the people in them are just as apathetic as the parish councils seem to be, unfortunately. I think a total review, probably going against something that's not a parish council, but as sort of an area committee, a neighbourhood committee. I know years and years ago, there used to be residents' associations in Boston, which did a fantastic job. Our village is split as to two sides of a A52. Unfortunately, most of the parish councillors are in one side and the residents are in the other, but they don't seem to want to listen to the residents. And I think this works for a lot of the villages, like with Franks, we're split by an A52 and you get parish councillors from one side who don't want to listen to people from the other side. So I do think a full review. Councillor Goodale's speech, I'm actually was quite interesting because it's something I've not known. Obviously, as a new councillor, I didn't realise how BTAC was formed or anything else. And it was very, very interesting to learn the ins and outs and everything. But also, Councillor Danny, I quite agree. We'd like to know what we will retain. I do think the borough does need a mayor. How we can obtain that, I don't know. But I do think it's something we would all like. Living outside of the town, I would like to still see the mayor representing the borough. But yes, I think a full review of the whole area would be the best way to go. We do need it, whether it's sooner or later, but it's only going to go up in cost if we leave it till later. And then it will be forced upon us to try and scrabble round and do it. So I think the sooner we decide to look at it, then the better. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wellborn. I agree with everything you've said, actually. I mean, I think that what worries me most about our country generally is I don't think people understand how they're governed. And our democratic process depends upon the fact that the public participation as such, public need to know how the process works, how they're governed, who their representatives are, and how to stand and make a contribution themselves. Otherwise, it looks like a closed shop, and it's all, mirrors and shadows and things of that nature. It's important for us that our democracy is seen to be vibrant and people understand how it works and how they participate in it and who represents them and where they are and how they can take part. I don't think the vast majority of the public have any idea about that. Yes, Councillor Austin, sorry.
Chairman, don't let me interrupt you.
No, please carry on.
Yes, I think, and Councillor Wellborn said, really, probably what I'm going to I will reinforce what she said a little bit. From my point of view, I think the public are confused as to what layer of government, local government does what. But and I think unitary status, if it comes, something that I was on a working group looking at this as a county councillor about, I can't remember now, 4 or 5 years ago. I forget now, because it was then overtaken by the government's idea about elected mayors. So the whole tack changed. As a county councillor, I represent a mixture of villages and a bit of the town. So for anyone who's interested, I represent half of Curtin, because in fact, Curtin as a village, Curtin as a parish, is probably bigger than a town like Spilsby. You know, it's crazy, but it is technically a village. And Councillor Mike Brooks and I share that. He has one half, I have the other half. But I then represent all of Frampton, and of course these parishes round the Wash, as Councillor Wellborn and Councillor Pickett know, they are shaped, they're very long and narrow. That's a historical thing, dealing first of all with the sea marsh and the drainage of the fens, but I won't go into that. And each parish, the centre or the old centre, tending to be on the high ground. So you've got these strips of long, narrow parishes, and parish council membership in, well, I've got Frampton, Wiverton and Curtin. One of those is at the moment in serious problems because it hasn't got enough members to be a viable, acceptable parish council. One of the other ones is just okay. If it loses one person, then it wouldn't be. And then the third one is fine. But no one seems to want to come and put themselves up for election to these parish council. They therefore co-opt. Well, one of the parishes has got a very nice stable group that they've co-opted, but the other two, it's not quite chaos, but it's not satisfactory in my mind. But these parishes, because they're very large parishes, they are not short of money. But then besides those, I've got my BTAC ward, you see. So I've got a whole mixture of different setups that I see. I don't think, to be honest, unless a parish council is well run, it's not, doesn't seem to be very good at, they just don't, and I think it's this apathy, this amongst the public as at large. And Councillor Wellborn talks about, yes, the A52 splitting things. Well, by the time you've got the A52 and the A16 and London Road splitting your parish, it's very much fragmented. But we can't deal with the parish councils, certainly unless we have a full review. But I think parish councils are probably the historical basis of those. I don't think we can interfere with. However, we have got to sort out BTAC, and because we can't say, right, okay, our public toilets are for our people. Anyone who lives outside will have to pay a bigger amount. You know, we can't work like that. It doesn't work, does it? It's not practical. But the market that we provide, all the Christmas stuff, that is for the wider borough or people from further afield. We're always glad, aren't we, to attract people to this amazing town. And when you see it at Christmas, then you know, it is fantastic, isn't it? But then, of course, some of the villages, they almost have their rival Christmas activities. Curtin, I think, has lights and things. Swineshead does. I don't know about Councillor Pickett's way. That's sort of the wrong way. But where a village has a centre, then fair enough. It does have its own Christmas lights and so on. But everyone really benefits, don't they, from these things which we, as BTAC, provide. So we are providing a service, surely, to the entire borough as it is now. And I would like to know more about how places like Stamford go on, although Stamford in many respects isn't comparable because it is not demographically equivalent to us at all.
No way.
It's a different strata of the population, I think you might say. But within South Kesteven District Council, in fact, there's a mayor in Stamford, a mayor in Bourne, and a mayor in Grantham.
And Sleaford.
No, that's North Kesteven, but never mind. Don't worry about that. But I was just looking, you know, that one district.
All right.
And that was all. But there, of course, geographically, it's a far bigger area. We are such a small borough that everyone looks to Boston, don't they? Right. I'm not saying anything very useful. I'm just saying that parish councils really have an awful job recruiting members.
Well, thank you, Councillor Austin. I have done a bit of research. I looked at Sleaford today and looked at the town council there and how they operate. It's very interesting. Not much the income for Sleaford town is not much different from our BTAC. I looked at well, what else I looked at? Skegness also seems to be very efficiently run, roughly the same income. So it can be done, but obviously Boston's not Skegness and it's not Sleaford. It's a different setup. So we'd have to be very careful. I'm, you know, reluctant about charging down a particular pathway. I think just we need to tread carefully, but I think there is a process that we need to undertake, and that is to consider the entire borough as a whole. I really do think there's a need here. I'm going to call Councillor Noble in. I think you want to come and give us a viewpoint?
Good evening, fellow councillors. Essentially, you have three options before you. One is to trigger this community governance review. One is to decline it. And the third is to reconsider when the direction of local government reorganisation for Lincolnshire is known. Now, to me, the third course would seem eminently the most suitable. When we had the members' briefing about this about a week ago, we had the rather dubious image of Councillor Welton looking into his crystal ball and telling us that local government reorganisation is inevitable. Well, it's not. For a start, generic might be replaced. Secondly, the process in which counties are dealt with in turn, Lincolnshire may be 20th on the list. And also, if my party doesn't win the next election, who knows, but the Labour Party may take a completely different view of local government reorganisation. So there's two things to consider, really. One is the CGR, and the second one is the actual possibility of a town council. Now, when one looks at the rationale or the aims of the CGR, and I'm quote, it's to improve community engagement, to have better local democracy, and more effective and convenient delivery of local services. Well, there's absolutely no evidence that a town council would achieve better delivery of local services. As for local democracy, I don't think there's a democratic deficit at the moment. I think the system works perfectly fine. We have parish councils, we have borough councils, and we have, obviously, on the national level, we have an MP, and we have the county council. If the fact that people are apathetic, there's no guarantee that if we had a town council, people would be any less apathetic. But what worries me is we could be indulging in this expense of at least £10,000 with use of officers' precious time for something that may never happen. And if it does, if there is local government reorganisation, and if we have unitary authorities, well, the borough will disappear, and we will have a town council anyway. It will happen. So you don't even need to have a community governance review. I'm concerned about the particular cost, because obviously, if one does have a town council, you need a town clerk, salary 55,000 plus all the administrative backup staff for that. You're going to need a deputy town clerk. You're going to need a press officer, a finance officer. All these are costs. And going to a point that Councillor Woodliff, you made actually, when you were talking about the right for councillors to speak, even if they don't live in the borough. All I'll say is this: I work in the borough. I have lived in the borough. My children live in the borough. My grandchildren live in the borough. I work in the borough. I come into town every day, and I park every day. And given that BTAC gets its money from the council, and I as a portfolio holder for finance, have to be sure that monies are wisely spent. That's why I fundamentally disagree with this proposal, because there's no necessity for it. Should local government reorganisation happen, then by all means, a town council will be set up. But until then, we need to do absolutely nothing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. I suppose my only comment out after that is that I live in the town and I obey the BTAC precept. I obviously do park in, well, I do other things inside the town to shop. I pay for a parking space at Centenary Methodist Church, so I don't use the town car parks. So I contribute to the welfare of the church, maintain its structure, I suppose. But I do pay the BTAC precept, which is slightly different from all the other things that people do. Councillor Goodell, you look to want to come back, so I'm going to let you.
Yeah, I would, please, Chair. Thank you. Just to clear up the thing about the mayoralty. I mean, obviously, if Boston has a town council and the borough remains as it is, then the mayor will stay exactly as it is. It's the borough mayor, and the town is the town. The fact that the town used to be the borough has nothing to do with it. The actual borough is the area of the old town of Boston, the old borough of Boston, and the old rural district council, when they were amalgamated in 74, became the new borough. So that effectively is the borough, and that's who the mayor represents. So there's no question of the mayor being part of the town council. I mean, the only time I think that would be considered, would consider looking at that would be if we do go to unitaries, and we'd probably try and see if we could get the old borough of Boston reinstated, so that it would be, if that would be possible. I doubt it would be possible. I think when we go to the costs, I mean, as I said earlier, BTAC do pay quite a considerable recharge into the borough's coffers, and the borough council do not give BTAC its money. BTAC's money is financed from the people who live in the town. It is paid through the borough and is administered by the borough, but it is exactly the same as the parish council's precepts that are collected by the borough as well. So although we use the borough services, or BTAC does, they are paid for, and to some on BTAC would say a rather advantageous rate to the borough, but whether that depends on your point of view, I suppose. So it's the costs. I mean, I accept the costs would there. There's no getting around that. And obviously, the more local level you have for representation, the greater the cost. That's strictly that is true. I mean, it's obviously that's the argument Martin Hill is making, that he wishes to be a whole the county as a whole, because it's a lot cheaper and the savings are greater, because he doesn't get rid of all the borough councils, district councils, gets rid of them all, doesn't have them to pay. So I mean, obviously that's his argument. But I accept what members are saying about you know, what would we be, what would we have, would we do this, would we do that? Those questions can only be answered by having the review. If you don't have the review, you can't answer the questions. Without the review, it is just my view against Councillor Noble's view, and Councillor Austin. You know, it is all our own individual views. Until we have a embark on the review, then nobody actually knows what it would be. But I still come back to the fact, I mean, I hope Councillor Noble is right, and that the unitary authority options don't happen. I don't share his view, I'm afraid, because my understanding is at this very moment that the county council are looking to trigger a review for Lincolnshire as it is. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But my colleagues on the county council tell me that is the case. So we will see on that. But equally, as I said earlier on, when we're looking at parish reviews, if we do go to unitary authority, then parishes will have a lot more responsibility than they already have now. And if they're struggling at present and given more responsibility, what will happen then? So I do think there is a need for a total review of the borough. I accept the charges will be more, but I mean, we can wait. We can wait until the decision is made one way or the other. that may be the case, but I fear that for a whole borough review, that would probably be too late. And I fear that a lot of, I mean, can you imagine now saying to Boston as a town and the parishes, there you go, you're on your own. Look after yourselves. If we have a review ourselves, at least we can organise ourselves and know, or well, have a reasonable case to put forward as to how we would like to see this borough run if we do move to a unitary authority status. I accept there's a cost involved. How much that would be, who knows? I don't personally think it would be that much more. I don't think it'd be £10,000 for every parish or anything like that. But who knows? I mean, it's just we would have to get professional advice as to how much that would be. And of course, we'll have to consult the parishes. But so I'm happy to wait until that process is happened, if that's what this committee decides. I feel loath to move that we go for a borough review, as I'm only a substitute member. But if members keep saying that's what they would like to see, so I am, as a substitute, happy to move that we recommend to the cabinet that they move to a borough review, and that I'm quite happy for it to go back to VTAC at any time if it needs to change the recommendation or to ask VTAC's view. But I'm happy to move that, Chairman, that we ask the cabinet to look or consider a review of the whole borough, and then it's up to them then what they pass on to full council, isn't it? But I will move that, Chairman. I say I'm a bit loath to as a substitute, but
that's fine.
It does appear that members seem to be hearing that way, so I'll move that.
I will second Councillor Goodale proposition.
Excellent. Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I think it's very important. Thank you.
I must bring in Councillor Nigel Welton again. Nigel, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Chairman. I'm just picking up a few observations and maybe a few things that might help the committee before you make your recommendations as it stands. From a budget point of view, BTAC have agreed on the town ward part. In order to do a borough-wide one, the cost exponentially increases. There is no budget in this, no money in this year's budget or been identified. And as there's no budget, that may delay the process until the next financial year. And if BTAC wishes, or this committee wishes to go ahead with a governance review for the town wards, and you want that to be done as quick as possible, then I would suggest you do it as the town wards. And the reason I say that as well is I don't need a crystal ball. As mentioned earlier, I actually open my eyes and see what's happening. My understanding is that a letter has been sent by county to government. Devolution or reorganisation will be happening, and probably quicker than we would expect. And if that is the case, then once that happens, you would have a full review of the whole borough area anyway. If it was my decision, I would say stick with the town wards. You've already got it agreed at BTAC. You've got the finance agreed at BTAC. That can go straight from here to cabinet. Cabinet could send that straight to council, and you could be moving on with your governance review. If you try to make decisions that we may have to go back to BTAC to ratify, that might delay your process even longer, as from what I understand, the next BTAC meeting is not till October. So it's up to you, Mr. Chairman, in your committee, but that would just be my helpful advice in order for you to move forward quickly.
Thank you very much, Councillor Welton. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Oh, yes, Councillor Austin, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I would be prepared to support that, provided it can also include those 450 residents, please, who pay precept, the BTAC special expenses levy. but they are represented by the Witherton councillors, and yet they can't, they've no say at Witherton Parish Council whatsoever. They don't even vote for anyone, a member for, the members of Witherton Parish Council, but they don't vote for a member for BTAC. So as long as you all consider them, then I'm okay.
Well, we have a motion on the table and it's been seconded. So I'm inclined to put that, but my view is that your suggestion actually goes back to what we've been suggesting here, is effectively a borough-wide review, because I don't think we can just consider, the issue with Witherton. There may well be other issues across this borough, and probably are. So, I don't know. I don't know. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Councillor Bob.
in the governance review, the consultation says any relevant involved people. I'm just trying to bring up the exact words for it now. It says the next steps. Yeah, so in the consultation, it does say that you would consult with involved people. And if these people pay the BTAC precept, then they should be consulted as it affects the BTAC area. They may not have a councillor representing them in their locality, their ward on BTAC, but they pay into BTAC, therefore they should be part of the consultation.
I agree with that, but I think there's a wider issue here. I think there's a wider issue, because being consulted over just the process of going to a town council doesn't actually resolve the issue that they're not actually represented at BTAC. That's the issue, isn't it, Councillor Austin? They're not representative.
I think if we did have a review just of the town wards and we had a town council, then that would be, they would be represented by a town councillor rather than a borough. The borough council would be the borough council, and the town council obviously would have to have its own elections, which will be separate from the borough. So the actual one would assume that the town council would be, as it sits at present, within the town's boundaries, and that would take in the Councillor Austin's residents, or the residents that used to be Councillor Austin's ward, but now in Witherton. So that would take in those electors and those members of the public. So I don't think there is an issue there. I mean, I am concerned with the fact that Councillor Welton made that obviously this may be held up, because if things are as imminent as is basically being said, then there is a pressing need to move on with this. But I am generally concerned about what will happen to the parishes if we don't involve them at all.
Yes.
But I mean, can you imagine if Mr. Hill or Councillor Hill gets his way, we have the whole of Lincolnshire Authority. Well, we have because he's after North East Lincolnshire, North Lincolnshire as well, isn't he? But I mean, people are already saying in Boston now that all the money goes to Lincoln. I mean, what would they say then? So I do think we do. I mean, I don't want to leave anybody behind in this sense, so I moved the recommendation that I did. And really, if the cabinet feel that this can be done on a two-speed process, then I'm happy with that. And BTAC's recommend, they can push BTAC's recommend whatever they recommend to council, because the recommendation went from BTAC to the cabinet sent it back here. So I think listening to members here, that the decision here would be that the whole borough needs reviewing. And then it's really up to the cabinet if they wish to suggest a two-tier thing. But equally so, I mean, let's forget, we apparently, if I remember from Jonathan's presentation at the budget meeting, we put £20 million into reserves from the money the government gave us for COVID regeneration or something. with what the government give us from the money from COVID. So we put that into reserves. So there seems to be money available if we need it, because if we made a profit from the money from government from COVID, then probably Jonathan can let us know how much it was. But I'm sure he said there was some went into reserves anyway, that we made a profit from that. So if we did, then obviously then there's that money is available, isn't it?
I think it was a few 100,000, but Councillor Noble, do you want to come back a minute?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The council itself has received over 2 million in funds from the government. 30 million has been disseminated to local businesses. We have a 700,000 plus smoothing reserve, which we aim to use the next 2 years should we get any unexpected budget pressures. So that's the situation. So we're currently in a healthy position, and obviously we have been very generously remunerated by central government for the problems caused by the 3 lockdowns and the COVID restrictions. And we do anticipate getting some more money from central government, more, for example, from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. So that's the position. 700,000 plus surplus at the moment. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Noble. I thought it wasn't sure it was 800,000 or less than that. But anyway, thank you very much. It certainly wasn't millions, but it's still a quite substantial amount of money.
My apologies, Chairman. I obviously misheard, or whether I was being optimistic about how much we got.
There's nothing wrong with being optimistic. I like the idea of being optimistic.
Well, anyway, I know we put some into reserves, but anyway, there you
go. Right. Well, we have a motion before us. Have you written it down, Lorraine? All right.
Chairman, Chairman, the proposal is to recommend to Cabinet to consider a borough-wide community governance review and to go back to BTAC if necessary, or to request their views. And that was seconded.
Right. Well, I'm going to call a vote on that now, Jeanette. All right. So all those in favour of the proposal?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4. I count 5.
All right. Now, is you?
Sorry, I can see 6.
Yes, that sounds
6 now, Jeanette. Yes.
6.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And any objection? Any?
There's no one else.
I know.
That's unanimous, then, Chairman.
Yeah, it's the ghost in the room. I was going to say. We shouldn't say that. Right. Thank you, Jeanette. We have concluded that, haven't we? Actually. I need to find what I did with the papers. Actually, I put the moving stuff around all the time. Have I got here? Oh, yes, I got it here. Right. Now, what does it say? Thank you. We've had a very full and thorough debate. That's certainly true. Yes, we've gone through that part. I think, yes, we have gone through that. So we now come to the work programme, don't we? Which appears at the end of the agenda pack. Mr. Fisher, do you have any on which to update the committee regarding future agenda items? So it's over to you, Andy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to confirm for the committee, colleagues from United Lincolnshire Hospitals Trust have accepted your invitation to come on the 16th of September. And the invite and the chairman's series of questions have gone to the CCG as well. So I'm hopeful that you'll have very significant senior representation, either in person if that's possible, or if not, electronically at the meeting. So I think the 16th of September will be a very full meeting with a single agenda item for you. We then have a review of this committee's terms of reference. We agreed that at the football ground. We will I'll present a paper that will look at rationalising its terms in relation to the new corporate plan. So that's the primary focus of that, to make sure that the committee aligns itself to its to the council's corporate plan, and then hopefully there will be a paper in time that we can bring forward in relation to the case management system. So we've got an agenda for the calendar year. We then go into January, and if you remember at the last meeting, I've said any time any members have any items either tabled at the meeting, we'll note those and I'll ensure that appropriate papers and reports are brought forward, or do feel free to email myself or the clerk any items that you would wish to come forward so that we can discuss, or you, obviously the committee, can discuss to see whether they make the work programme between meetings. If any members have got questions that they would like to put to the NHS, ULHT and CCG, if I could request please that all of your questions are in writing to me by the 6th of September. That will then give a week for them to be sent out and for our colleagues to have the opportunity to prepare responses. What I've asked, or what I've set out to colleagues, is that the 16th will be a meeting in public, but not a public meeting. I say that what they have, the both chief executives have, are the the chairman's questions that he submitted, but I will put any others forward. So they will have the opportunity to respond in writing. That's exactly the format. Some of you will have been here when we've had John Turner and Neil Hepburn previously for a very similar discussion focusing on local health services and Pilgrim Hospital. And it's courteous, obviously, to give our guests that accept our invitation those in advance. I have suggested there will be follow-up questions that will come as a consequence of their responses. So if there are any items that you would wish to either consider adding to the November meeting or for the 13th of January or future meetings tonight, I'll note those. If not, I say the open invitation is, if you want to route those through me, I'll ensure that the chairman has them in advance of the next meeting so you can discuss those formally.
Yes, Councillor Austin.
Would Mr. Fisher, could he just clarify where, two things, where are you expecting to hold the UHLT meeting, and are we hoping to have their representatives physically present? Because it's not the same when they are on screen. The acoustics aren't always brilliant, but I don't know whether you were wondering, are you likely to be using the stadium for that one? Although obviously it costs us, but, or shall we say it costs the public ultimately.
Thank you.
But if it makes for a better meeting, mightn't it perhaps be preferable?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As it stands, where officers are in attendance, there's a 2-monthly review by the senior leadership team of the venues. So this is the venue we've been using. The downside of the stadium, despite its fantastic offer, is our ability to have teams and to actually broadcast via YouTube. So the offer has, what I've said in the invitation to both of the chief executives, is that the chairman and the committee would appreciate in-person attendance. But again, we're talking very senior people in the NHS. They're highly aware of COVID security. So I did set out in the invitation, with the chairman's consent, the opportunity to join electronically if that enables them to actually join. So I have set out the committee's preference for in-person, but of course, when we're inviting guests, particularly in their field of work, given that we're still in a pandemic, that has yet to be considered by the invitees.
Any further comments from anybody? Yeah. Yes. Fine.
Yes, Chairman. I did ask about car parks, the potholes in the car parks at the Pilgrim Hospital are absolutely terrible.
They are. I did send a.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing that.
I sent a note on it. I've raised it twice actually.
Yeah.
And that in Lincolnshire Health Scrutiny Committee.
But they're enormous potholes.
Dodge the. They always say they're going to do something about it, but no, they don't.
I mean, it's been like that for a couple of years or more now.
Pardon?
It's been like that for a couple of years or more now.
Yes.
So, well, I visited recently to Mrs. Scratchclay, and I couldn't believe the size of the potholes. I thought there were big potholes in the roads outside, but in that car park, it's absolutely disgusting. It really is.
You could disappear into some of those potholes, couldn't you?
Well, I think
literally.
I think the tray have to gain a bit more business. pull down one of them, you've been A&E.
I think it's a very serious matter. I have
It is.
raised it twice
Yeah.
in Health Scrutiny Committee meeting, and I'll have to raise it a third time, try and get them to do something about it, because they're receiving money for this car park. We pay for the use of it, but it's a disgraceful car park, absolutely disgraceful. Anybody wish to comment on that, who's had experience of Brogan Hospital's car parks? I know it isn't really. I just thought I'd swing it through anyway, take a few liberties,
Sorry, so if it'll help the committee, I'll see if I can find an officer level contact, and I'll see if I can engage with them at that level, and I'll just pass that on for you.
Please do. Yes, every little helps there. Everybody think about opportunities for the work program. I'm rather conscious of the fact that we're quite short of members here tonight, and I do wonder whether really we ought to lay this to the next meeting, if possible, but so that more members can have a say in this. I don't know how people feel about that, but my feeling with only, 6 of us here, is it? It's not enough people to populate a work program. We need all the members present. Any comments on that? Am I out of order on that, or how do you feel about that?
I totally agree with you, Mr. Chairman. We should have a full house. All
Yeah.
councillors should be present.
Yeah, I agree
I
as
think
well.
to have a proper and
Yeah.
healthy discussions
Yeah.
on all matters, I think it's very important for us to do that.
Yes. Thank you very much. Any comments from anybody else? Is there a comment there? I'm not quite sure.
No, Chairman, it's fine. I mean, I was just thinking it wouldn't really matter if there was 6 or the full house. If somebody had a pressing issue, I would have thought that you would be able to put it onto your work program, but that's just my own view. You don't deal with housing, do you?
Do we deal with?
Do you deal with housing?
I think we can deal with anything, can't we? Nuclear power stations, the war in Iraq, and we can deal with anything, can't we? Or lack of war in Iraq. Any thoughts? Andy, can you advise us on what we can and cannot do? Is there nothing we can do?
Mr. Chairman, usually on the work programme, it's got our 2 corporate priorities, and now they're not there. They've gone totally out of my head, but I believe they're people and performance. Sorry,
no, that's the other one, isn't it?
People and place. So, arguably, if there's a people and place issue, it can come to your committee. Historically, housing matters have come here, and equally have gone to Environment and Performance Committee, depending on the nature of the ask and the framework of the report. So if you have any particular ask about housing, level it to me now and I can clarify for you. Alternatively, if it's something wider, because with the September committee, this committee agreed to make it a joint committee, inviting colleagues from Environment and Performance as well. So if you want to give me your topic and what it is you're after, if it's better dealt with as a member briefing or something, then I can support bringing that forward.
Yes.
Thank you, Andy, because since you talk about the environmental scrutiny, because I raised few issues with some of the houses who has more than 30 bin bags from their houses, so that basically will attract the rodents, rats, anything, and that's been mentioned probably now more than 4 weeks, and nothing has been done. Actually, there is more bags now, and there is more bags on the other side. So, is there anything we can do? Because I don't see anything moving forward. I talked to the portfolio holder, Councillor Deborah Evans. I talked to Jane Moore. They said they're going to do something, but now it has been more than 2 weeks. Nothing has been done. So, what can we do?
Off the top of my head, Mr. Chairman, I can't answer that question without knowing. I mean, maybe if we have a discussion after the meeting, you give me the detail. There are operational issues I'll take forward for you as best as I can in terms of solving the issues. But if you've got a topic ask for scrutiny, if you want to clarify for me what that is, then we've got future meetings that we can consider how that can be tabled within our constitution.
I think that is at EMP because it's performance, isn't it? Environmental performance. I'm just learning.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, when you've got the constructs of environment and people. Actually, yes. You could argue that they're intrinsically linked, and therefore you can't separate them. Hence, why you could have the same discussion legitimately within both both. But I'm more than happy, Councillor Danny, to talk to you about those specific issues, and I'll take those forward just as an operational matter for you. But I say, if colleagues have got a housing topic you want to give me, I'll type it up now.
Off you go, Councillor Goodale.
Well, mine would be to consider licensing of all rented property. But now HMOs are licensed. The problem we have in my ward and near where you live, Councillor Danny, is the fact that we have houses that are overcrowded, but are technically not an HMO because they don't fit into the definition of an HMO. So although they're overcrowded, populace-wise, they are not an HMO licensable-wise. So I know that we can legitimately have a small area where we can run a licensing program without asking the Secretary of State for permission. I did email around all members last year, early this year or last year, sometime, and I was assured by the portfolio holder that we would look into these issues of housing, but we haven't. So I would ask you, if it's within this committee's remit, if you would look at that issue.
Yes, we will. We will. And the other one, of course, I'm happy to take on any topic. I don't want to tread on Judy Skinner's feet, basically. I'm aware about taking on topics which might fall into her remit or whatever. But if she's happy with anything that we want to do, we can always run it as a joint scrutiny committee meeting on those issues alone. I don't have any problem with working with Judith. I'm happy to work with her on everything. Yes, Councillor Austin.
Interestingly, just before, as Councillor Goodale, or before he started speaking, I was going to also say about rented properties and the condition of a lot of them and the number of people who live there, and they are not necessarily HMOs. So it's something that I'm concerned about as well. Also, it isn't entirely a town centre issue. There's a huge amount of, well, shall we say, in very rural areas, there are a lot of properties that are not in good condition and they are rented. And judging by the number of cars, there's probably a lot of people living there. Okay.
Right. Well, thank you, Councillor Austin. We obviously have a topic there which must be considered. Andy, have you?
I've just written down, Mr. Chairman, the legal framework for housing control. Because, I mean, when we're talking of non-HMOs, and you've got then the conflict between Part 10 of the Housing Act 85, you've got Housing Act 2004, and a whole range of other things. And I'm not, although I was head of housing for years, I'm not entirely sure there is any legal framework where a property is not statutorily overcrowded that you can use any power to limit occupancy for single households. But if I look at having a paper for your January meeting, just that goes through again the legal framework for housing control, and we can just cover off HMOs and particularly focus on the control measures around overcrowding, single households, etc., etc. Would that go some way? And then I'll ensure that there's officers that you can pose your series of questions to.
And empty properties that are kept empty for years and years and years. I'm dealing with one on Wiverton Low Road with Stuart Horton that's been empty for years.
But can I just say, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate I'm putting in to Judy, but I would particularly like to look at. I keep saying to look at the this licensing of rented properties, because although I appreciate that we have a lot of legal things with overcrowding and the like, if we have a license and you can only rent it if you have a license, then I think we can actually go some way to actually having some of the rules and regulations in place through that license, which may assist to combat some of the problems which we have. I'm not saying it will be the answer to them, but I think it may assist. But I'd like us to look at licensing rather than it being dismissed as it has been in the past.
Right. Well, we don't dismiss anything here. You can consult and discuss anything here. We have any topic, flights to Mars, whether SpaceX is entitled to, and I can't give it up. But Elon Musk is, anyway, I apologize for that to members. Judith, Councillor Welborn.
Well, mine also, like Paul, yes, I'd like licensing looked at for HMOs, but also I did bring this to EMP, and Judith Skinner sort of said basically it was a CNC issue.
Right.
So yeah, I think she'd be quite happy. We can do a joint one, which I think a lot of our members would be happy over. But yeah, she said it was a CNC more than an EMP. So
That's fine. If Judith's sending it to us, then we will do it.
thank you.
We will do it. Yes. I don't want to tread on her toes. Get on well with her. I don't want to have any,
No, as I say, I had
Rough
brought
stuff.
it up previously, and she said it was more for CNC than EMP. So
Right. Well, you can tell her that I've accepted her instruction. That's okay, is it?
So if we refer to it as the legal framework for housing control, that can include empty property, it can include selective licensing. I will reiterate, as I've brought numerous papers previously, selective licensing can only be driven where you've got low demand or significant antisocial behaviour and is evidence-led. And but I will look for the evidence to see whether it exists for your January meeting. So I'll ensure that a paper covers that broad remit of housing control.
Right. Well, I hope there'll be a full meeting for that. You've all raised, queries here about this. Let's hope that meeting is fully represented and there are no absentees. That's the thing. I don't have a meeting with any, well, I'm very pleased that 6 people have turned up, but I'd like to have the full house if we can. It's much better when we have a full house. I'm sure there are other issues. I can think of 1 or 2, but these are more critical, I think. These are more critical. Other things I have in mind, I have perhaps circulated. We'll put those back a bit. Yes.
It's very critical subject, because I think once we touch on it, we will have to discuss the well-being of people living in these conditions as well, and the kids, and the well-being of the children. They are the most affected ones, yes. And I do believe that it's our duty to look at these matters, because we live in town, and I think we are elected by the public, so we should do our best to ensure that the public, they're living in the right ways and living comfortably.
Right, well, we have a very, very important topic. Thank you, Councillor Goodale, for presenting it to us. You will, of course, be present to that meeting to give us the full... I shall require you perhaps to subpoena you. You'll be required to attend. Yes, Councillor Austin.
Might be a sort of constitutional matter. Is a group allowed to gift a committee seat to another group? And if not, why not? I'm actually, interestingly, at County Council, I'm for 2 years a stand-alone independent. I'm not, but I am gifted by one group a seat that they think perhaps maybe they don't want to fill it, but rather than see apologies all the time, because I would gladly gift a seat to somebody, to a group who could use it.
Well, my view is that any councillor should better attend this meeting who wants to attend, and I would always allow councillors to speak. I've allowed Councillor Noble to speak tonight and Councillor Welborn, and I'm very grateful for their attendance here, because I think it's extremely important we have a good debate. So my view, we've got 30 councillors. I'd be happy to see all 30 here, and yes, all 30 could speak. I suppose when it comes to presenting motions, and so there might be a slight issue, but if a member is not a member of this committee, if they want to ask me to present that particular motion, I'd be happy to do so. So there's no restriction as far as I'm concerned. That's the way it is. I don't think really it matters which committee whether you're on it or not. You've got something to say, and you want to make a comment, then you need to be here, and I will certainly allow you to speak. That I think is probably as far as we can go, isn't it? Right. Unless anybody else has any objections, I want to stay here all night. No. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our business. I will now close the meeting. You can all go home. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll end the stream on YouTube.
Thank you very much. Yes.